Good morning. Today we are looking at MCA Day 3, which is going to be two things, looking at the distance formula, which is on our formula sheet, and we are also going to be looking at equations and inequalities. So hopefully that part is review. The new part would be this distance formula. It looks like a really big formula. It's given to you on your MCA test. You don't need to memorize it, but I will be showing you how to use it so that you can find the distance between 2 points. So some of you might be thinking, well, we already did this. We know how to count slope, rise over run. That's not what I'm talking about. We're going to still look at the slope. The slope is the angle or the tilt of the line. So like if you're walking uphill or downhill. The distance is really how far is it? Okay, so again, the slope is the angle or tilt of the line. Distance is how far is it from here to here. Now, there's no way to count diagonally. We can't do that. If we had 2 points, let me just think, for example, that let's say we had this graph, and I wanted to find the distance between here and here. Well, that's a nice straight line going 1, 2, 3. The distance would be 3. Maybe if this is centimeters, the distance is 3 centimeters. But since we have a diagonal line, we can't count diagonally like that. It does not work. You have to count straight left and right or straight up and down. And because our line is diagonal, we have this equation to help us figure out the length or the distance. Another word for the distance would be the length of the line. How far is it? If we put a ruler up to and measured it, how long would it be? So we have our 2 points, -6, 1, and 3, 6. I'm going to label them. I'm just going to pick this as my first point, x1 and y1, and this is my second point, x2 and y2. So if I plug this in, I have d for the distance equal to the square root of, and now we're first going to subtract our x's, x2 minus x1. So x2 is 3. Minus x1, which is a -6. Two negatives there make a positive, and it's squared. Plus, then we have our second set. We're subtracting our y's. y2 minus y1 is 6 minus 1. And don't forget the squared. The exponent of the power of 2 is to the parentheses. So now if we simplify this, I'm going to follow the order of operations. So first simplify p for parentheses. So we have d equals the square root of, well, 3 plus 6 is 9, so I have 9 squared. 6 minus 1 is 5, so I have 5 squared. Now that I've taken care of my parentheses, I can move on to e, my exponents. We're going to simplify each one separately. We can't add 9 plus 5 because that's way down here for adding and subtracting. So then 9 squared, or 9 times 9, is 81. And then 5 squared, 5 times 5 is 25. It's not 5 times 2 is 10. No, no, no. It's not 9 times 2 is 18. We're doubling or multiplying by itself. So if we add these together, 81 plus 25, we get 106. Now, you could leave your answer like this. I want you to know how to plug this in your calculator to simplify as well. So remember, square root, we need to get right here. So push yellow, square root, and then type in 106, and push enter. If we round it to the 10th, which is 1 decimal place, we're going to have 10 point, if we round this 2 up because the next number after is greater than 5, it'll be 10.3. So if you want to use the approximation, these two mean about. The distance is about 10.3. Now we're also going to look at the slope. Our slope would be counting rise over run. If you want to do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, you can. That's on your formula here. That's slope down here. So see, these are very different. Slope is the tilt or the angle of the line. Distance is how far is it. So I'm going to just count rise over run because we have a graph here. It seems easier than plugging it in and making more mistakes with negatives and positives. So I'm going to rise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So the angle of that 9 is positive 5/9. So notice we got different answers here. Let's do one more with distance formula and slope. So here are our 2 points. They're just given to us in the form of points instead of a picture. So I'm going to label them as x1, y1, and then x, y, second point. So I can plug them in to the distance formula. So first we have x2 minus x1. So we have 8 minus a negative 2. Those two negatives make a positive, and it's squared. Then we have our second set of parentheses, y2 minus y1, or negative 7 minus a negative 3. Again, two negatives make a positive, and it's squared. So let's simplify our parentheses first. 8 plus 2 is 10. So I have 10 squared. Negative 7 plus 3. Be careful here, it's not negative 10. There's more negatives, so it's a negative 4. We're subtracting. Squared. Now notice I had this negative 4 in parentheses because 4 squared, like that, negative 4 squared, is very different than negative 4 squared. This second one is negative 4 times negative 4, because it's 2 times 1, 2, which would give you a positive 16. This one here is a negative, and then 4 squared, or 4 times 4, which would give you a negative 16. We don't want this one. We want our two negatives to multiply to make a positive, because this whole thing is in parentheses. So when we simplify this, this part becomes a positive 16, because a negative times a negative makes a positive. And then 10 times 10, 10 squared is 100. So I have d equals the square root of 116, which I'm just going to plug in my calculator. They won't always be such big numbers. Oops, I need the square root. Second square root. This time it just happens to be similar to the last one. So if I round this, I have 10.7. If I round up to the nearest tenth, that will go up to 10.8. The little squiggles would mean about 10.8. If you left it as this, that would be fine for now. However, on the test, it might be listed as a decimal. And then we're going to find the slope as well. So this one's only 2 points, so we need to use the slope formula. So y2 minus y1. We have negative 7 minus a negative 3. Two negatives make a positive. And then on the bottom, x2 minus x1. So we have 8 minus a negative 2, again making a positive. So negative 7 plus 3, there's more negatives. 7 minus 3 would give you 4. Different signs we subtracted. Then on the bottom, 8 plus 2 is 10. Now this is a great answer. However, we can simplify this. If I divide both by 2, negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. 10 divided by 2 is positive 5. So that's it on distance formula and slope. So now you know the difference between those two. We're going to flip over to the back side and review equations and inequalities. One thing you need to know, if we have an inequality, we need to graph it on our number line. We'll do that in a minute. And then our one trick we need to remember is that if you multiply or divide by a negative number, then you have to flip the sign. Flip this sign or the symbol, the less than or greater than. So first, I'm going to draw my line down to solve this to get a by itself. This says a divided by negative 5. The opposite of dividing is multiplying. So I'm going to get rid of the divide by negative 5 by multiplying by negative 5. Now we just did exactly what I said. We just multiplied by a negative number. That means we need to flip our symbol the other direction. 5 and 5 on the top and the bottom cancel out and make 1, so we have 1a or just a. And now 11 times negative 5. 11 times 5 is 55. So there's our answer. We do need to graph it on a number line because this is an inequality. So it doesn't matter what numbers you put on here, as long as you put negative 55 on here. We'll be going down towards 0, so smaller numbers this way, and then the more negative numbers this way. Oops, 56. So remember, if you have the equal to, those are closed circles, meaning filled in, could be exactly at that number. If it's not, we can have an open circle, because that's where it's starting. Since this one has equal to, it's closed. And like an L, less than negative 55 would be pointing towards the left, towards negative 56. All right, this one's just an equation, so we can just solve it. We want to get g by itself. We're undoing the order of operations. We're going to get rid of adding and subtracting first, so subtract 11. So we have 2g equal to, and if I subtract here, 2 minus 1 is 1. 5 minus 1 is 4, so we get 14. And then the opposite of multiply by 2 is divide by 2. 14 divided by 2 is 7. If you're not sure if you got the right answer, you can plug it back in, see if you got it right. Alright, next one. We have letters on both sides, so be careful. How can I get all of these letters on the same side? You can't combine them together because there's this wall here, but I can move them over from one side to the other. So I'm going to move the 4m. Right now it's a positive 4m, so I'm going to do the opposite and subtract 4m from both sides. So those eliminate. 8 minus 4 is 4m. And then we have minus 7 is less than 5. So then we want to get the m by itself, so get rid of adding and subtracting first. So I'm going to get rid of this negative 7 by adding 7. So I have 4m is less than 5 plus 7 should give us 12. And then divide by 4. We're dividing by a positive, so leave your symbol the same. 12 divided by 4 should give us 3. And you do need to draw a short little number line and put 3 on it. 2, 3, 4. This one has an open circle because it's just less than or greater than. And like an L, less than 3 would be towards 2 or 1. Alright, 2 more like this. This one, we have same letters, but they're already on the same side, so we can just combine them together. This one you had to move because they're on different sides. These ones are on the same side. So 4d minus 2d gives me 2d minus 3 equal to negative 15. Then we need our letter all by itself. Get rid of adding and subtracting first. We're going to add 3 to get rid of the subtract 3. Those eliminate, and I have 2d equal to, and then negative 15 plus 3, there's more negatives. Different signs, we're really subtracting 15, 14, 13, 12. And then last, the opposite of multiply is divide. And that will give us a negative 6. Don't need to graph that one because there's no inequality, it's just a number. Alright, last one like this on this page. I see parentheses, so remember, whenever you see parentheses, you need to distribute negative 7 and then p minus 12. So negative 7 times p is negative 7p. A negative times a negative I know makes a positive. If you're not sure what 7 times 12 is, well, Let's just plug it in. 7 times 12 is 84. So it's going to be a positive 84. So I just rewrote it. And then I need to get the letter all by itself, so I'm going to subtract 84 first. So those eliminate, and I have negative 7p is greater than or equal to. Now these are all negative, so same sign, add them up. So it gives me a negative 98. And then last, the opposite of multiplying by negative 7 is dividing by negative 7. Be careful, whenever you multiply or divide by a negative, you have to flip your symbol or flip the sign. P, and then two negatives here, multiply or divide to make a positive, and then 98 divided by 7 gives me 14. Our last step on this one, I know this one was a little bit longer. Simply draw your number line so that we can graph this. So here's 14. Put a couple numbers on there if you'd like. This is a closed circle because it's equal to. And then like an L, less than's to the left. For some reason all of these are to the left. If we ever have a greater than one, it would go to the right. We did begin here, but we had to flip it because we divided by a negative. Alright, our last two, a little more complex. We have two symbols here. However, we know how to solve this just like we did the last one. We can simplify our parentheses by distributing. We have 5 and then 3p minus 2. So if I multiply 5 times 3, that's 15p. 5 times negative 2 is negative 10. And then in the middle, I'm just going to rewrite this whole thing. Negative 15, that came from there. And then 15p minus 10. And then there's a 20 on this side. So now I need to get my letter all by itself on the inside of the symbols. So remember, whatever I do to the middle, I have to do to both sides. So just like before, get rid of addition and subtraction first. I'm going to add 10. So those eliminate, and I'm left with 15p. Negative 15 plus 10, there's still more negatives. 15 minus 10, since we're different signs here, subtract, give us a negative 5. 20 plus 10 is 30. And then last, the opposite of multiply by 15 is divide by 15. So those eliminate, and we have p. 30 divided by 15, well, 15 goes into 30 2 times. If you're not sure, you can plug it in your calculator. And then negative 5 divided by 15, still going to be a negative. 5 does not divide into 15. However, we can simplify this. Negative 5 over 15. If we divide both by 5, we can simplify, and that will be negative 1 over 3. So negative 1/3. Now, this next part, where we graph it, is where some people got confused. So if we have two symbols, we can split this up into two equations. And remember, our arrows are always pointing together or apart. They will never be pointing the same direction. So this one, p is less than 2, that one's good to graph, because this would be an open circle at 2 pointing to the left. It's less than 2. But over here, we can't graph this unless the letter's on the left. So we need to flip-flop these around and flip our symbol. So flip the symbol. Now we have p and negative 1/3. So this one's a closed circle, and we flipped it, so now it's pointing to the right, which is this. They're pointing together. This is what we call an AND statement. And remember, this one is in OR, because it's one side or the other side. Alright, last one. This one says OR right away, so I know right away this is what my graph is going to look like. We just need to solve each one separately. These are two separate problems. We need x by itself, so first I'm going to move this, just the number over, add 6. So I have negative x, and then 6 plus 6 is 12, so we have 22. And we can't have a negative x here, that's really a negative 1. So the opposite of multiplying by negative 1 is dividing by negative 1. Whenever you multiply or divide by a negative, remember you flip your symbol. Those eliminate, we have x. 22 divided by negative 1 is still 22, it's just now negative. But you can't graph this like this, so we need to rewrite it. Flip the x first, flip our symbol, and negative 22. We just rewrote it so the letter's on the left, so we can graph it. Next, we have 2x plus 5, so I'm going to get rid of my adding and subtracting first. Subtract 5. 2x is greater than or equal to 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. And then the opposite of multiply by 2 is divide by 2. So we have x is greater than or equal to, well, 6 divided by 2 is 3. That one already has the letter on the left, so we can graph it. People tend to like this type of problem better because they're two separate that you just need to graph on the same line. Some people find this difficult splitting it up, but you guys know how to rewrite, so you should be good. So negative 22 is smaller, 3 is the greatest. So 3 is a closed circle pointing to the right. And open circle at 22, because there's no equal to, pointing to the left, like an L. Alright, so hopefully we're working towards making some progress here. This whole front side of your homework is using the distance formula. So you have 8 questions using the formula that is right here. And then the back side is solving 9 questions. Only graph the ones that have the symbol, like number 3 you're going to have to graph, number 4, number 5, number 6. Ooh, I have lots of graphing ones. I'm sorry, you guys. The only ones you don't have to graph are the first 2. If you have other questions, please let me know.